It's official. After 52 years together, the UCs are finally breaking up with the SAT. What does that mean for your chances of admission? Hey guys, James here. I'm one of the founders of Cortex Education, and I'm a college admissions consultant focusing on personal development as the best way to achieve success. The SAT has been terrorizing high school students for nearly a century. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about that history, its tumultuous relationship with the UCs, why the UCs decided to dump the SAT and ACT, and what that means for your college admissions prospects. But first, if you like the content that I've been putting out on this channel, be sure to hit that like button down below, because if you don't, the YouTube algorithm says, man, this channel is super lame, nobody likes it, and it won't share these videos with anybody else who might benefit from them. Also, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, because you don't want to miss any of the great content I have coming out for you guys in the next couple of weeks. There's a lot to talk about as things are changing around us, and I'm going to keep you right on top of what you need to know. All right, let's get into it, and we're going to start with a brief lesson on the history of the SAT. Our story begins in the late 1800s when YouTube was just black and white and pretty grainy. Yes, I'm kidding. YouTube did not exist in the late 1800s. Back then, each college in America basically had its own admissions exam, and a bunch of colleges realized, whoa, this is super inefficient, and so they came together to create an organization that would produce these standardized exams that then a lot of colleges could use as their admissions criteria. When these colleges came together, they created the College Board, an organization that would produce these exams. It was in 1926 that the College Board came out with the first of what we call the SAT. It was a generalized exam that many students were supposed to take to apply to college. Over the years, the SAT gradually increased in its popularity as more and more colleges decided, yeah, we like this and we think it's a good part of the admissions process. And in 1968, the UC system adopted and actually began to require SAT scores as part of its admissions process. What's special about the UC system is that it's actually one of the largest college systems in America, and certainly one of the most influential. And the UC system is considered one of the most progressive college systems in America, which means that anytime any component in the college admissions process seems to be unfair for certain groups, you know that the UCs are on the case. Let's keep in mind what happened in the 1960s and onwards. The civil rights movement happened in this country, and there was a lot more attention being paid to whether our society was actually being fair to everybody within it. And so in the following decades, there were a lot of rumblings in the United States about whether the SAT and now the ACT were fair exams, whether they gave students a fair shot at getting into colleges where they deserved to be. And you can bet that the UC system was really at the forefront of pushing the College Board to adopt new formats of the test and to start testing students differently in a way that they thought was more equitable. And in 2001, things got a little bit more dramatic. That year, the president of the UC system suggested to the Board of Regents, which is kind of the highest governing body at the UCs, to stop requiring the SAT and ACT as part of the admissions process. Now that didn't happen, but the College Board was pressured into changing the SAT to make it more in tune with the times in 2005, and that's exactly what they did. That was the year that I was a junior in high school, and I had to deal with this whole switcheroo where all of a sudden the SAT went from a 1600 format to a 2400 point format. It was a huge change. But the changes that the College Board made in 2005 were really just a band-aid on the slowly sinking ship that was the SAT. And in 2012, the UCs announced a huge policy change. They would stop requiring the SAT subject tests, even though the SAT and ACT were still required. In part due to all of this pressure from the UCs as well as other colleges, the College Board said, okay, we're gonna redo the SAT again, which they did in 2015. And they were hoping that it would be a more fair exam that everybody would just accept and love and just be like, cool, this is great. But to nobody's surprise, except maybe the College Boards, these outcries continued, and people continued to say that the SAT was unfair and it was out of touch with what students actually needed to know before entering college. People even started suing the UCs to try to get them to stop using the SAT and ACT in their admissions process. And then last year, in 2019, two scandals hit the SATs. First of all, there was the huge college admissions scandal that we couldn't stop reading about in the news for like 3 months. And in that scandal, it came to light that a few SAT administrators, just a few bad apples in the whole barrel, were actually getting bribed to change student scores. And second, the College Board came out with what they called the adversity score, which secretly tried to rank you based on how hard the College Board thinks your life is based on where you live. As you can imagine, that did not go over very well with the public. Then, when it seemed that things couldn't get any worse for the College Board, coronavirus shows up. This year, it became impossible for students to actually take the SAT or ACT. And so what did the UC president do? Well, Janet Napolitano, president of the UCs, pushed forward this plan to phase out the SAT and ACT requirement. And this week, the Board of Regents of the UCs adopted it unanimously. It's official. The UCs have now broken up with the SAT and ACT and are going to phase out that requirement in the admissions process over the next few years. This change in the UC policies affects 200,000 students who apply to the UC system every year. And although other colleges have not been quite as aggressive in getting rid of standardized testing, the UCs are a trendsetter in this arena. And so I personally expect more colleges to follow this trend that the UCs are pushing ahead on. So what does this plan include? For any of you applying to the UCs this fall, this new decision by the Board of Regents doesn't change anything. The SAT and ACT were already optional due to coronavirus. If you submit scores, they will be considered, but if you don't have scores, theoretically, that won't hurt you. For anyone applying to the UCs in the fall of 2021 or 2022, the same rule applies. In other words, your scores will be considered if you submit them, but if you don't have scores, no big deal. In theory, that won't hurt your application. Things get more interesting if you're applying to the UCs in the fall of 2023 or 2024. For you guys, ACT and SAT scores will not be considered when they're trying to decide whether you got admitted or not. SAT and ACT scores will only be used for scholarship or other, minor purposes. And by 2025, the UC system will either roll out its own, shiny new test, or they're going to get rid of the testing requirement altogether for admissions. So in a sense, this is going back to the late 1800s when different colleges had their own exams for admissions purposes. But remember, so far, this change only applies to the UCs, so don't go canceling your test prep classes just yet. But if you are a younger student, keep your eyes peeled because the UCs do tend to be trendsetters in this space and other colleges might choose to follow them. What does this all mean for you? Number one, first of all, since a ton of colleges out there are still looking at the SAT and ACT, you should still do well on those exams if you can. The second thing is that as standardized testing becomes less important, focus on your grades and your activities and make sure that you're growing from your activities. The more you experience challenges and the personal growth that comes from going through challenges, the more interesting your college essays are going to be. And what I've observed in my work is that colleges are kind of moving more towards using the subjective factors in college admissions to gauge whether they want to admit a student. And the third thing that's actionable from all of this, in the end, if you've put out a good effort and you didn't do so well on the SAT or ACT, you can look at which colleges are now dropping the SAT and ACT requirement or are making those scores optional. And that'll give you the best shot at getting into a great college. And through all of this, I think it's just super important to remember that we should just focus on what we can control. The world is changing really fast and is going through a lot of crazy stuff. But what we have to do is just keep one eye on what's going on, and that way we know what we need to do. And through this pandemic, I'm gonna do my best to keep all of you informed on what you can do to stay on top of college admissions while everything is changing around us. So hopefully you found this video interesting and informative. And if you did, go ahead and hit that like button down below because as I said at the beginning of this video, the YouTube algorithm needs your help in knowing which videos are actually worth sharing to others. And also hit that subscribe button and the notification bell because you don't want to miss any of the great updates I have coming out for you, especially amid all the changes that we're seeing in the world of college admissions today. Again, my name is James and I'm one of the co-founders of Cortex Education. I'm a college admissions consultant focusing on personal development as the best way to achieve success. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time.